Well, it is Thursday of this final week of Easter, and we're starting to see Paul is on his way to Rome. So our scene opens up with him in Jerusalem. There's something really powerful to watch here. I think this is important to notice. And what you want to see is how Paul uses everything to help people to understand who he is. And he uses it with the help of the Holy Spirit to his advantage. Now, let me give you an example of this from my own life. I am a Navy veteran. Whenever I need to use that, and I'm not talking about, to get special benefits or anything like that. I'm not talking about that at all. When I use that for making my position known, I always do. I mean, one of the things I'll do, and this is a minor point, but when I'm in the hospital and I'm visiting veterans, I always say, well, I'm a veteran too, Navy veteran, sonar technician, and everything else, because people sometimes assume by default that I was a chaplain, but I wasn't. I was an enlisted man. So I would say, no, I was a sonar technician. And I always bring out, I don't know if they like it or not, but a lot of veterans there are Vietnam veterans. And I always bring out, because they're older guys and Vietnam veterans, I always bring out, I'm not a Vietnam veteran. I wasn't old enough for Vietnam. And I thought that might sound kind of stupid in a sense, because it's like saying I wasn't old enough to go through the actual horror that you did in Vietnam. But I do bring that out. But I use it in my ministry. But I've used it in other ways as well. If I'm writing a letter to a political authority of something I'm either fighting for or want to believe in or want them to, or I believe in and I want them to act on, or whatever the case may be, I will always say, and as a United States Navy veteran, I'm saying this. I've written letters, immigration letters. Now, one of the things I do with immigration is, someone will come to me and maybe they go to church. Well, no, not maybe. They go to church. They're part of the parish, the whole thing. And their lawyer says, could your priest write a letter saying, that this is true? They come to church. They're great members of the community. They do a lot for, others, especially if they're men, because a man going to church is something that has a stronger influence on a family than, we'll say, a woman goes to church has an important influence as well. But a man going to church has a tremendous influence. So I always, cite, well, this man, or if it's a woman, I'll say, and this woman goes to church, But I always do that. And I will always end with, and as a United States Navy veteran, I ask you to take this into consideration. So I always use that if I need to. Well, this is what Paul does. He brings out that he is a veteran. And Paul, as we see in today's reading, was born a veteran. I mean, not a veteran. I wasn't a veteran. I'm sorry. A citizen. He was born a citizen. So he always was a citizen. And that's an important distinction, because the minute a Roman citizen, especially one who was under arrest, said they were a citizen, everything changes because they have to be treated differently. And this is one of the things that happens. Oh, you're a citizen, hold on. And as you will see, the soldier there realizes, the centurion realizes he bound a citizen. I mean, that's a big mistake. And this is pretty powerful. Well, this is something that the Holy Spirit uses through Paul, using his status. You see, Paul uses everything. And then when he is speaking to this, the Sanhedrin, he uses the fact that he was a Pharisee, and he comes from, I believe, he's the son of a Pharisee too. He uses that. So, and there's an interesting line at the end of today's reading, which I'm fascinated by. And it's actually Acts 23:11. So let's go there. And we can talk about this real interesting line there. So 23:11, always remember we're using the Catholic public domain version, so we don't have to worry about copyright issues. Okay. Then on the following night, the Lord stood near him and said, "Be constant, for just as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so also it is necessary for you to testify at Rome." Well, in a sense, Paul didn't do that much. What actually the Lord is saying to him is, see what you did. It may not seem a lot to you, but it was a lot. And now you will do that in Rome. So what you're going to notice there is that if you allow the Lord to do it, he will use everything about you in order to proclaim his word. I just want to take a second and just mention something completely different. Now something completely different. If you've never seen my studio, but my studio is right next to this huge window that looks into the grounds of the convent where I live, and the window allows me to look at an area that looks like, to tell you the truth, Wyoming. I've been in Wyoming. It looks this beautiful. It's got trees, great field. It actually looks like part of Brazil too. So it's fascinating. Well, it's been hot all day. As I'm recording this is on Tuesday night. It's been hot all day. So now we're getting a thunderstorm, and it's just absolutely gorgeous outside. So that's fascinating to see. This big thunderstorm is happening. So we can recognize that. So and there is something I'm using as well. So there we can look at what Paul is doing. The Holy Spirit actually is leading Paul to use everything he has. And it isn't a lot. He's just there. He is testifying. How is he testifying? Well, he's there because he is an apostle of the Lord. His very presence is testifying on its own, and that's it. And his presence is challenging those people who are rejecting him. But that's one of the things that's happening. So it's his presence that's doing this, and it's challenging everything, but it's not a lot of effort on his part. What's he going to say? My name is Paul. I am a citizen. I was born a citizen. Everyone reacts. But it's not like he has to run a mile or 100 miles to prove his point. He just states who he is, and that's what the Lord uses. And then you see that next line, right? That next line. Now you'll have to testify for me in Rome. Wait a minute. You want me to do something? Well, what did I do here? All I did is spoke who I am and why I'm here. That's it. Well, that's the Lord saying, that's all I need. Think of that the next time someone says, I don't need to go to church. I'm good enough just as it is. Well, as little as it may seem that you walk into a church on a Sunday morning or a Saturday afternoon, but let's prefer Sunday morning, on a Sunday morning, because that's who you are and you are a Catholic and you are a disciple of Christ, that in itself may seem like such a minor thing, but in the Lord's understanding, that's huge. It's huge. And the Lord uses that little thing that you go to church, that little thing that you pray every day, that's huge. And so this is one of the important things to realize as we see in this reading, that the Lord uses every single part of it. Let me read the whole thing just so that we know. So it's 23, 6 through 11. We heard verse 11, but we'll hear it again. Now Paul, knowing that one group were Sadducees and the other were Pharisees, exclaimed in the council, "Noble brothers, I am a Pharisee, the son of Pharisees. It is over the hope and resurrection of the dead that I am being judged." Now remember, the Sadducees did not believe in the resurrection. The Pharisees did. I think the Sadducees would be what we would call today a secular Jew, and the Pharisees were religious Jews. For the Sadducees claim that there is no resurrection in neither angels nor spirits, but the Pharisees confess both of these. So that simple sentence got the two of them at odds with each other. Then there occurred a great clamor, and some of the Pharisees rising up were fighting, saying, "We find nothing evil in this man. What if a spirit has spoken to him or an angel?" And you can imagine the Sadducees rolling their eyes because they didn't believe in spirits and angels. And since a great dissension had been made, the tribune, fearing that Paul might be torn apart by them, ordered the soldiers to descend and to seize him from their midst and to bring him into the fortress. Then on the following night, the Lord stood near him and said, "Be constant, for just as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so also it is necessary for you to testify at Rome." What did Paul do? He didn't do anything. He just stated who he was. That statement was so powerful, it caused a fight, it made it clear who he was, and it was revolutionary. This is powerful. This is the reality. This is what we're looking at. And the Lord used it, and he just did who he is. That's why the next time someone says, well, I don't have to be, the church, I'm good enough as it is. No, you don't understand how powerful a statement that is to go to church. And people are saying, well, people should be dressing better at church because we're worshiping God, blah, blah, blah. They're not thinking right. This might be the second part of my discussion. They're not thinking right because they're just saying people should, but they're not explaining what really is at stake here. That little extra effort is huge in our service to God. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We're every single Monday through Friday. And check us out, subscribe, like, the whole bit. We'll be right back. Did you know that the Catholic Audio Media Podcast is available on various podcast platforms? You can find us, among others, on Podbean, which is our home platform. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, among others. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. On some platforms, such as Spotify, look for Catholic Audio Media, 3 words, and subscribe and listen to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer, previews of upcoming podcasts, previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com, your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. And so we're talking about how this tiny effort of just simply saying who he was enough to make a profound statement to the Sadducees and Pharisees on the Sanhedrin, to a point that they started arguing over it and they started fighting each other. But all Paul did was make a simple statement. You don't have to do a lot to serve God, but do what the Lord wants for you to serve God. And part of that is, by the way, I opened a window to kind of let the cool air in, and heat doesn't bother me at all. It's an issue I have. I literally have been in places where it's like 110 degrees outside or inside. I have no clue. It doesn't bother me at all. But when a little coolness comes in, it kind of feels good. So I opened up the window. I don't know if it's going to make any difference in the sound. But at the same time, we look at this tiny little thing that Paul did, and God takes it a big way. And this is an important distinction. That's why, something as small as praying every day is essential. And if I'm in a situation where, I'll give you a good example. I had my day planned out yesterday, and sometimes I can do my holy hour in the morning. Sometimes I'll do it in the afternoon. Sometimes something comes up and it's not exactly an hour. It might be 45 minutes. Even sometimes it might be a little less. I try my absolute best, because my schedule changes, to make sure somewhere along the line I do as close as I can to an hour, or at least 45 minutes. Well, yesterday I got 2 emergency calls to the hospital. Fortunately, they were at the same time. Now, why do I say fortunately? Well, you don't want to say an emergency call is good. It's not. But what I mean, at the same time, I got called to one, and just as I finished one, I got called to the other in the same hospital, so I didn't have to come home and then go back. So you recognize that. And this obviously threw my schedule off, but it was okay. That was okay because that's going to happen. But that simple little effort of making sure I am, as best I can, being faithful to my prayer time as an essential aspect of my ministry is powerful. But you might say on your own life, well, I do 20 minutes a day, and I try to make sure I do this 20 minutes a day, and it's a prayer time and the whole bit, but I could be doing so much more for the Lord. Yeah, you could, but that's not what he asked for. And you can see, what did he ask for Paul to do? Literally just show up. This is one of my favorite sayings, comes from Andy Warhol. 90% of life is just showing up. And that is so true. By the way, speaking of showing up, you know that Andy Warhol went to Mass every single day at St. Patrick's Cathedral. For anyone who wants to be critical about Andy Warhol, he was a practicing Catholic, went to Mass every day at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Always keep that in mind. So we understand, and think of that. That's just such a minor thing that the Lord asks us to do. And it's funny that I'm talking about that right now, because I'm one of those people who gets really frustrated in traffic. I just do. And if the traffic's not moving, and I was in a situation, last night and today, but it was one of the situations that you had several trucks, and trucks are big, so they tied up a traffic light, so now the traffic is backed up because you have trucks that may be 3 vehicles, but they're taking the space of like 10. And you've got these 3 trucks in a row, and they're tying up traffic in one intersection, which is tying up traffic in the feeding intersection. And I'm like all frustrated because I have to get to the hospital. And finally I get to a street near the hospital, and the person's driving 10 miles an hour below the speed limit. And I'm trying to get there. Someone is dying, so I'm trying to get there. They've already been anointed, but I've been asked to be there and do a prayer as someone's dying, so I have to be there. So I started to pass them, which I could do, legally pass them, and then they speed it up. Right? Well, fine. You want to speed up, I'll pull in behind you, which is, I have no choice. I'm going to pull in behind you, but keep going the speed limit like I try to get you to do, because I've got to get to the hospital because someone is dying. So it's just kind of that whole thing. But, so I'm trying to be faithful to God in one sense, but I am who I am, and I get really frustrated. And Brockton, Massachusetts has a real traffic issue because a lot of streets only have 2 lanes, one going one way, one going the other. So if, Billy Joe is driving 10 miles an hour below the speed limit, so is everyone behind Billy Joe. And when you're in a hurry to get to the hospital, that's really frustrating. So anyway, we're talking about this powerful thing, how understanding the little things you do for the Lord may be exactly what he wants. And you say, well, no, I haven't saved the world, but I didn't ask you to save the world, the Lord can say. Yeah, but I didn't change people's lives, but I didn't ask you to change people's lives, the Lord can say. And that's one of the things to look at. What is the Lord asking you to do? And to consider doing it, and to show how much you are serving the Lord. And then you realize the little things that you may do. Go to church every Sunday. That's the minimum requirement. Don't be a clown on the internet. That's one of the things the Lord asks you. I was looking at, some of the things that some of the people who really write this very self-righteous stuff. Oh, look at the thunder. Just as I'm saying self-righteous stuff. This very self-righteous stuff on social media. I have X, the really self-righteous stuff. Someone made a point that it's a real issue, that the Easter duty is a vast majority of people committing sacrilege every year because they're receiving communion. Maybe they shouldn't. What a disgraceful statement. What an absolutely disgraceful statement. And you've got these people being critics on and just attacking. And, And maybe what the Lord would want you to do is not be a clown on the internet. And one of the fascinating things is I want to respond to these people, but I realize all I'm doing is playing into them. But that's one of the things. Don't be a clown on the internet. Go to church once a week. That's all the Lord asks. You can go to church every day, but he doesn't ask you to do that. He asks you to go to church once a week. And you might even say, I'm Catholic, but I don't, I really don't feel that I should receive the Eucharist. Well, then don't. No, if you feel you shouldn't receive the Eucharist and you have a good reason for not receiving the Eucharist, don't. That honors God too. And that minor little detail, to you might not be a minor little detail for obvious reasons, but that simple act saying, I'm not ready yet, I need to talk to a priest, that honors God. It's God too. And when you see what powerful act that St. Paul does just by showing up, 90% of life is just showing up, and saying nothing more than this is who I am a citizen, I am a son of a Pharisee, so powerful, and the Lord uses it. Yet he could turn around and say, what did I do? When I left my last parish, everyone said, it was kind of shocking for me. You did so much for us. I said, what did I do? And they said, no, you did so much. I said, what did I do? I started coffee and donuts, which I did, and they loved it. And they love it. Still goes on. Well, what did I do? I said, let's get coffee and donuts. And I made sure we had coffee and donuts. But that was powerful and help build community and stuff. It's a little thing. So sometimes, in my mind, but it's a big thing, and it's a great service to the Lord, even though it may seem like a little detail. What little things do you do for the Lord that it might be all that he's asking, and you're saying, but I haven't changed the world. Lord doesn't call you to change the world. He's just saying, show up at church once a week. Pray every day, and he'll do the rest. And this is something that Paul demonstrates. And then he is told by God, oh, by the way, that little thing you just did right now, I need you to do it in Rome too. Rome, it's a little bit more of a sacrifice. We'll talk about that at another time. In the meantime, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Snakes, zombies, sharks, heights, speaking in public. The list of fears is endless. But while you're clutching your blanket in the dark, wondering if the sound in the hall was actually a footstep, the real danger is in your hand when you're behind the wheel. And while you might think a great white shark is scary, what's really terrifying and even deadly is distracted driving. Eyes forward. Don't drive distracted. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. Well, we're tomorrow, not Monday yet. Tomorrow we're going to look at the very last weekday of the entire Easter season. It's the Friday of the 7th week of Easter. Then, of course, we go into Pentecost weekend. And, I don't have a show that features the readings on weekends. We have shows occasionally on weekends. But Monday we have a memorial, and the reading actually will be from the Acts of the Apostles. We're still in ordinary time. It is a memorial set up by Pope Francis right after Pentecost. So it's a memorial of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So we'll be looking at that on Monday, and then we get right into the letter of Peter, first one, on Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, you know the real is back. Father Carr Chaplain from the city of champions, dropping daily reflections coming straight from the field. The raw truth revealed for the strong-willed. It's the Greatest Act of Defiance podcast with your host Father Carr, a message built to last. The Greatest Act of Defiance podcast. That's right, the Greatest Act of Defiance.
The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.